Today we're going to talk about a topic which affects every single person in the United States and most people globally, and that's stress. We're going to go into details on stress management, and we're going to give you specific ways that you can cope with stress and reduce the harmful effects of stress on your body. Very, very important that you get a sheet of paper and pencil, if at all possible, and take notes on this, because we're going to be covering a lot of information very, very quickly, and so I don't want you to miss out on any of this very, very important topic. Now, stress management. Stress is the most widespread medical problem in America today. It's a major contributing factor in 100% of diseases. No one is immune. Now, let me explain to you how that happens. When we get stressed out, our body basically goes into what we call the flight or fight syndrome. And God made us this way, and here's why He made us this way. If we're walking through traffic and we see a bus coming towards us, we have to move quickly for us not to be run over by the bus. And so He made us have a flight or fight syndrome. In other words, we're either going to run away from the bus or we're going to try to fight the bus, which I don't recommend. And so what happens is this. Our bodies constantly go through this throughout the day, all of the time. In addition to that, stress is the body's nonspecific response to any demand placed on it, whether the demand is pleasant or not. So in other words, you may really enjoy playing your softball, but if you're behind in a game, you get stressed out on it. Though it's a pleasant stress, you're still stressed nonetheless. And when you stress, your body still has the same response physiologically, whether it's good stress as far as stress that you're enjoying or bad stress that you're not. 60% of our working and playing hours are spent under stress. Under adverse conditions, it can go anywhere from 80 to 90, and sometimes I believe all the way up to 100%. Because what ends up happening is this. If our bodies are constantly being stressed on a constant basis, it causes some level of the flight or flight syndrome, and it goes through in our bodies on a continual basis. God created us so that our body pulls together all of its resources so that we can carry out the flight or fight syndrome. Very, very important that you understand this. This is not something that's necessarily bad. This is what our bodies are designed to do. Here's what our bodies aren't designed to do, as I've just mentioned. If we occasionally have to run from a bus or run from a lion or run from a tiger or get into this fight or flight situation that we get into, our bodies can deal with that. But nowadays, a lot of folks are facing 2- and 3-hour commutes to go to work one way, sometimes an hour, sometimes 2, sometimes 3, then they have to turn around and go home. I was just speaking to one of the station folks here, and a lot of folks are driving 400 or 500 miles, 1,000 miles a week, going back and forth to work, commuting on the weekends. All of that is stress, and our bodies simply aren't designed to handle that amount of stress on a continuing basis. And here's why. Whenever you get under stress, one of the first things that happens is your body stops the digestive process. Now, that's why, have you ever been eating dinner or lunch or breakfast and you get in an argument with your spouse or someone at work, and all of a sudden you get this big knot in your stomach and you're like, wow, man, I don't feel good. I got a big knot in my stomach. Food's not digesting. Well, that's exactly what happens. The food doesn't digest because the body stops the ability to digest the food because it's not thinking about the digestive organs. It's thinking about pumping blood to the extremities so you can fight or you can run. And that's very, very important that you understand that, because that's one of the problems that we have on a regular basis, is that we continually stay under stress and our bodies never get a chance to stop the flight or fight syndrome. So our bodies are constantly not digesting our food. And when we don't digest our food, we don't get the vitamins or the minerals or the essential fats or the essential fatty acids or anything else that our body has to have, the amino acids, to continue to maintain a healthy body. So our body begins to degenerate one day at a time, one day at a time, one day at a time. When you have problems with stress, you have increased neural excitability. You have increased cardiovascular activity and heart rate. And the body simply doesn't have the ability to maintain this increased neural excitability and heart rate for extended periods of time. I know a couple of years ago, we had 3 hurricanes pass through Polk County where I live. It's kind of funny. It's like X marks the spot in Florida when those 3 storms hit 2 years ago. All 3 storms went over our county. And we were the only county in the entire state that took all 3 storms. And like one week we were looking at the Doppler radar, and there were like 5 storms lined up out in the Gulf and in the Atlantic heading our way. And I'm like, this is crazy. After a week of that, you just get kind of worn down. After 2 weeks, you become numb. And by the 3rd storm, you're sitting there in a stupor wondering what's going to happen because you really don't have any way to get out from underneath the stress. Well, that's a very unhealthy way to live. And that's exactly how a lot of people live on an ongoing basis. A lot of you are listening today. You hate your jobs. You know, I'm sorry you hate your jobs, but I have good news for you right now. You don't have to stay at that job. You can leave that job and find another job you like. Always remember, the life that we've been given here on earth, This is not a practice session. This is the real thing. And you know, if you don't like what you're doing, you can always do something else. And if you're hating what you're involved in as far as your activities on a day-to-day basis, you can always change those. So always remember, you don't have to stay under a lot of the stress. Another example, a person's always running late. They're always late for every meeting, everything they go to, they're late. Tremendous stress getting in the car, they're late, they're late, they're late, affecting their lives, affecting everything about their lives. It puts the body under tremendous stress. I had a young man working for me for a while last year, a college student, and it was crazy. I mean, he'd work for me, do a good job, then the next day wouldn't show up, be late, wouldn't call for 2 or 3 days, call back, can I come back to work? Did this 4 or 5 times. Finally, I said, you know, what's up with this? That was his pattern. His entire life was spent like that, being stressed out about not being there, stressed out about not getting to work, and the problem was he had constant health problems. Constant mineral imbalances, constant muscle cramps when he was working in the yard trying to help me. A young guy, 20 years old. And the reality is a lot of that was self-induced because of what he was doing to himself. And we're going to give you some key secrets in a few minutes on ways to cope with stress. You also have decreased antibody production, muscle wasting, increased sodium retention. And another thing that really happens, and people don't understand this with stress, is you elevate cortisol. And this is one of the most dangerous things about drinking coffee. When you're stressed out, you should never drink coffee, because when you're stressed out, your cortisol elevates, and when you drink coffee, your cortisol elevates. Now, if you want a kick in the pants in the morning to get going and you want to get some caffeine, a little bit of caffeine is not that bad for you, but you can use some green tea or something, the equivalent of green tea. But don't use cortisol, don't use sodas, don't use regular tea. Green tea is actually okay. It actually lowers cortisol levels. I personally don't drink it because, number one, I don't like the way it tastes, and number two, if I stop drinking it after several days, I end up getting headaches from it, because remember, caffeine causes constriction of the arterioles that feed the brain. Your blood vessels get smaller in your brain when you drink caffeine. And when you stop drinking the caffeine, those blood vessels expand back to normal. When it does that, it basically creates cranial pressure, which causes caffeine withdrawal headaches. And when I was in graduate school at Florida State, I used to drink 18 cups of coffee a day. When I was 27 years old, a couple years out of graduate school, I came down with heart disease and I almost died from it. See, stress, the caffeine, the cortisol, the coffee, all of these things put stress on the system. So you need to try to avoid that as much as possible, except for the green tea, which seems to do pretty good if you don't mind the headaches, or if you may not get headaches from green tea. Now, remember, when you basically are cannibalizing your muscle and bone, the reason that happens is this: your body can't digest the food. And when you can't digest the food, you can't get proteins and amino acids that you have to stabilize your hormonal structure. So the body has to cannibalize muscle and bone when you're under stress. That's why you'll see somebody, they'll go to Vietnam. We saw this back in the 60s and in the 70s when the Vietnam War was coming to an end, and did go to Vietnam. They would look like they were 25 years old. They'd come back 2 or 3 years later, they had white hair. Their body couldn't get the nutrients that it needed in the hair. And it's amazing to me how you see that. People age at such different rates because of the stress levels. Additional problems include emotional anxiety, insomnia, headache, impotency. You also have psychosomatic disorders that occur to it. Headaches are a really big problem with stress, and headaches are also a very big problem when it comes to caffeine products, especially coffee. What I learned is this: I try never to drink coffee. I don't even have a coffee maker in my house. And it's not because I don't like coffee. I'm not trying to adjust my halo here. I love coffee. I mean, I could drink coffee every single day, and when I drink it the first couple of days, I feel pretty good with it. Mental acuity goes up, I feel a little bit sharper in the brain, but after 2 or 3 days, the cortisol that's being elevated by that coffee causes me to have the exact opposite. I feel sluggish, I feel terrible, I get headaches, it's just everything's a mess. So I've learned you don't want to put yourself into drugs like caffeine, which is a drug. And by the way, I was talking to Mary Lou Retton a few years ago when I was doing some seminars with her, and she told me that caffeine is actually a banned substance in Olympic competition. If you have high enough caffeine levels in your system and you're an Olympic athlete and you're a medal contender, you are disqualified. They know that it's a drug, and they know that it's a strong drug. So guys, listen to me. If you're going to use it as a tool. Don't use it as a crutch, and don't drink coffee every single day. Very, very important. If you drink it every once in a while, once a month, twice a month, now you're looking at me, you're laughing. Once a month, twice a month, I have 2 pots a day. So I have 18 cups a day, okay? I know I'm preaching to the choir here. It's tough on your system. It's going to make you get old really, really fast. It's going to make you store belly fat. It's going to elevate cortisol. It's going to be just a mess for you long-term wise, and it's also increase your risks of heart disease. So avoid it. And with women, it increases the risks of fibroid tumor formation in the breast tissue, and some researchers believe actually increases the risks of breast cancer. Now, there are also sociological problems, chronic unemployment, delinquency. All kinds of things happen to folks who are under stress on a regular basis, because the body, like happened to us a couple of years ago, you just get into kind of a stupor and you really don't know what to do, and you think, wow, I'm just kind of a pawn of the great scheme of things here, and I don't know how to correct this and how to get rid of this. There are some things that we can do. All of us have a stress savings account deposited in our bodies that I call our reserve energy. And basically what that is, that's our mineral reserve, our bone reserve, our protein stores reserve. And any single day that you take in less energy than you put out is, as far as I'm concerned, your first day of illness. I'm going to repeat that. Any day that you bring in less energy from the food that you eat is your first day of illness versus the food that as far as you put out more energy than you take in. Now remember this, food requires energy to digest. There are some foods that digest more efficiently than other foods. If you have a really big steak and you go to bed on it, a lot of times you're going to toss and turn all night because it's very difficult for your body to digest that. I'll give you an example. This is not correct as far as the numbers, but it'll make it simple as far as an example. Let's say you get 100 calories of energy from that meat you're eating, but it takes 70 calories of energy to digest that meat. So you're only getting a net gain of 30 calories of energy when you digest that food. That's why some foods make you feel so sluggish and so run down when you eat them on a regular basis. That's why we've gone into detail in this series as far as what foods you should eat, what foods you shouldn't eat, even on the top 10 foods never to eat, because we realize these types of foods can cause all types of health problems. So the objective is to spend your reserve energy savings account as wisely as possible. And also remember this, one of the reasons, again, that people age at such different rates, not to mention the cortisol and the coffee and the stress, is that a lot of folks overreact to simple circumstances. I mean, if you're driving in traffic and somebody cuts you off, you don't have to go berserk. I'm in the motor coach. We're driving up to a TV show, and we're coming up to Columbus, or we're going somewhere else in the country to do a TV show. And motor coaches, I don't like being behind them, but I drive the speed limit. When I drive the motorhome, I don't putz around on the right-hand lane at 50 miles an hour, slowing everybody down. But as soon as people see a motorhome, they automatically assume this guy can't drive, he's going to drive 50, he's got to be 100 years old, and we're going to get around him. I have people going on the sides of the road, going through the gravel, spinning gravel, throwing dirt, flinging around the motorhome, trying to get around it, and within a mile down the road, I'm usually passing them. And see, the thing about it is, don't allow circumstances to get you upset. The other day, we were at the airport, and we were flying back from New York, and we had our kids with us, and we were delayed for 5 hours. We were sitting out on the tarmac in the rain because we couldn't take off because we had a thunderstorm. I sat there, read a few books, took a nap. Some people are going berserk. Well, do something about this. Get us off this plane. And I'm like, guys, chill out. There's nothing you can do about this situation. I'd rather fly and make sure it's safe than fly and not be safe. So learn the things that you can correct those things, and things that you can't, either don't get involved with those things or find a way around them, or just learn to accept them and not get into a tirade about it. Now, let's talk about ways to cope with stress. Number one, I want you to pray. I want you to ask God to help you. I want you to get up in the morning, and I want you to have your prayer time. I want you to get up in the, if you're on double shift or second shift, or whenever you get up, have your prayer time. Or if that's not convenient for you, when you go to bed, have your prayer time. Think about the good things before you go to bed. Pray to God. Ask Him to help you. Tell Him to show you what you're doing wrong that could be causing some of the stress problems. Number two, I want you to do something that's so very important that the Bible tells us to do, and so often we don't do it. I want you to have one complete day of rest every week. Now, I know you probably are breaking into hysterical laughter now when you heard me say that, but I'm telling you guys, it's a scriptural principle. It's very, very important that you give your body a day of rest. Even God, after He created the heavens, the earth, and created the moon and the stars and the firmament, took a day of rest. We're created in His image. That's the way He designed us. Our bodies are not designed to run 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, under all that stress. Give your body a chance to catch up at least one day a week. Number three, identify what is stressful. Like I said, if things are bothering you and you can identify it and you can eliminate it, do it. Identify it. Talk with someone important to you. Plan ahead so you don't be late. Exercise on a regular basis. It really helps to eliminate a lot of stress. Tackle problems, positive attitude, avoid alcohol, drugs, cigarettes, caffeine, and sugar. Know what you can and what you cannot change. And very, very important, you have to supplement your diet with the nutrients that your body needs in order to combat the stress. And we've talked about these different types of nutrients throughout this entire series, but it's critical that you use supplementation. God never intended you to be stressed out and anxious and worried about the future. By applying the things you've learned today, you can begin to experience a new life without the problems that come from stress. This episode, we want to go ahead and we want to completely cover the top 10 list of foods never to eat. We want to go into detail again on how you can lower blood pressure, cholesterol, triglycerides, and blood sugar. Throughout this series, we've covered a list here, a list there, a list here, parts of lists here, but this time I'm going to include the entire list. So I want everyone listening right now, if at all possible, grab a sheet of paper and pencil, because I want you to take some notes, because we're going to give you some really, really important information for you and your family's health. The number one food that we tell you never to eat, this is critical that you remember this, are the high-fat luncheon meats. I include in this category bacon, sausage, ham, pepperoni, and hot dogs. This also includes nitrites in the food supply. So in this category, if the food is a luncheon meat or processed meat, even if it's turkey or even if it's beef, it has to be taken out of your diet. Remember, there's over a 5,000% increase in pancreatic cancer with patients that continually consume nitrites in their diet. And so you need to avoid these types of products. Plus, the nitrites increase the risks of colorectal cancer by forming nitrosamines when you digest them. Very, very important that you stay away from nitrites, high-fat luncheon meats, bacon, sausage, ham, pepperoni, hot dogs. All of these types of foods need to be completely avoided. Now remember, it's very, very important that you understand that the Bible also tells us not to eat these high-fat luncheon meats, the bacon, sausage, ham, the pork products. The areas of the country that have the highest pork consumption actually have the highest incidence of cancer in the United States. So the Bible is very clear as far as what we should and shouldn't do in Leviticus and in Deuteronomy. It's repeated multiple times. Now, I'm not telling you at all that you should think that if you're eating pork products that you're not going to get to heaven, but I can tell you this, there's a very high probability you're going to get to heaven a lot quicker, because this has nothing to do with salvation, but has everything to do with health. Remember, in the Old Testament, there were 4 basic precepts: God's relationship to man, man's relationship to man, the dietary laws, and the sanitary laws. When God came and He sent Christ for us, He forever changed God's relationship to man and man's relationship to man, but He never changed the sanitary laws, and He never changed the dietary laws. We can eat whatever we want to eat, do whatever we want to do. We have freedom in Christ, remember, as far as our diets, but it doesn't mean we're not going to have consequences with these types. And plus, ask yourself a question. Did Jesus eat pork? Did not. The Bible tells us in John, 1 John, that if we love Him, we'll walk as Jesus walked. Well, as far as I'm concerned, if He didn't eat pork, He set our example for us, and He didn't eat pork. Because remember, He was a Jew. Had He eaten pork, it would have been a sin for Him to have eaten pork, and He could not have died for the sacrifices for our sins. Always remember that. Jesus is our example. We're to walk and act and talk and eat, as far as I'm concerned, as Christ acted. He should be our mentor. We should emulate Him. Number 2 on the list we need to stay away from is aspartame, diet sodas, Splenda, Equal. Side effects reported to the Food and Drug Administration concerning aspartame and Equal: brain tumors, brain cancer, seizures, headaches, optic nerve degradation. Tens of thousands of complaints to the Food and Drug Administration concerning this artificial sweetener. And now it's been replaced with another product in the market called Splenda, or sucralose. There have also been thousands of complaints to the Food and Drug Administration concerning this product. Don't use these artificial sweeteners. They're very, very unhealthy. Sweet and low also is not good for you, but it's not as bad. Natural alternatives to these types of products would be stevia. And you can get stevia in pretty much any health food store. A lot of different places sell stevia. A lot of grocery stores sell stevia. You can get it in granulated form, and you can also get it in liquid form. It is basically an herbal product that works very, very well, doesn't have any calories. Another one you can use is brown rice syrup. That works very, very well. And you can always use a guave sweetener. It's it's a very low glycemic product. It's also used for diabetics. It's excellent, especially in a lot of foods that stevia doesn't taste good in. So there are natural alternatives to the use of these artificial sweeteners. Stay away from all of the prepackaged drink mixes that contain these artificial sweeteners. Avoid them like the plague. If you're using protein powders, chances are they've been sweetened with sucralose or with Splenda or with aspartame. Don't use those products. As far as I'm concerned, they're very, very unhealthy. We've gone into detail when we talked about diabetes in this series about aspartame and different side effects and different studies that I've seen and different reactions that people have had that we've talked about. So I don't have time to do all that today because we're trying to cover this entire top 10 list. Number 3 to stay away from are margarine products. I include in this category shortening. I include all of the different products that are trans fats. Avoid them like the plague. Anytime you look on the label that says hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated oil, don't use it. These increase the risks of heart disease, increase the risks of cancer, particularly breast cancer in women. Remember, trans fats are probably one of the most dangerous products on the market today. These Synthetic fats basically take any type of oil, like corn oil, and they bubble hydrogen through it at a very high temperature. They use nickel as a catalyst, and they form a saturated fat from a liquid oil, which means it becomes solid at room temperature. The problem with trans fats is they're not found in nature, and the human body simply doesn't know what to do with them. And so avoid these as much as you possibly can. Trans fats are an absolute disaster to your body. That's why the federal government has said finally that all manufacturers have to list how many trans fats are in products. However, they've got a loophole again in that law given to them by Congress, which states if there's a certain percentage or less of trans fats in the product, they can list it as 0, which is ridiculous, but that's what they do. So anytime you see the word hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated anything, don't use it. Very unhealthy. Number 4 on the list that we need to avoid are shellfish products and skinfish products. That includes lobster, shrimp, oyster, prawns, scallops, crabs, and clams. Remember, a lobster is an arthropod. A cockroach is an arthropod. All a lobster is a giant cockroach in the bottom of the ocean. That's all it is. Again, the Bible tells us in Leviticus and in Deuteronomy not to eat shellfish. Again, I'm going to repeat them. Lobster, shrimp, oyster, prawns, scallops, crabs, and clams. Stay away from them. Also, you don't want to eat eel or octopus or squid or any catfish or anything that's a skin fish. These are scavenger feeders, and basically God tells us in His Word not to eat them, and tells us in Deuteronomy that if we don't obey what He's telling us, that we have all kinds of diseases come upon us. And I particularly believe that these diseases are caused by these fish and these different types of toxic foods that we eat. Remember, God put these animals here to clean up the environment. An oyster can filter up to 50 gallons of seawater a day, taking with it all the mercury and all the sludge and all the junk out of the seawater. And then when we ingest the oyster, it has no excretory system. What ends up happening is we ingest all of those concentrated poisons into our system. Very unhealthy. We should never, ever do that. Now remember, in the state of Florida, every year, we have people die from shellfish poisoning. It's kind of like our alligator attacks that you've heard of recently. We had 3 people die from alligator attacks in several weeks. The state of Florida does its best not to let that kind of information get out on a national basis, including shellfish poisoning. But when 3 people get eaten by alligators in several weeks, then they have to basically, it makes national news and so everybody finds out about it. And for years, we've been telling people, you know, alligators are dangerous. You need to stay away from these things because, you know, we had one get caught in Lake Hamilton just a few years ago where I live, and it was between 18 and 19 feet long. These are large reptiles, and again, but guess what? Alligators are also unclean. They're on the unclean food list. And so we have alligator farms that raise alligators for hides and for food, but you don't want to eat alligators either. Next thing on the list we need to stay away from is the junk food category. I include in the junk food category Twinkies, Ding Dongs, cupcakes, and there's some other things in there that I want you to think about here for a second. I want you to write these down. They're on the chart, but behind me. Soy products, canola oil, all of these are junk food. Corn oil, safflower oil, all junk food. Don't put it into your body. The corn oil, the safflower oil, they contain way too much omega-6 fat, which clogs the arteries and makes the blood thick. You don't want those. The only things you want to cook in, I'm going to make it real simple for you. You can use olive oil to cook in, the cold-pressed virgin olive oil, or butter. In some cases, you can find grapeseed oil extract in some stores, but it's a little more difficult to find. You can cook in that too. But if you stay with olive oil and real organic butter without any hormones or chemicals added to it, it's a lot healthier. You know, it's amazing to me how in the United States, we consume all of these toxic products on an ongoing basis, and we're leading the world when it comes to heart disease, to diabetes, and to cancer. The leading cause of death in our children age 14 under, other than accidents, is cancer. The University of Southern California, they did a study a few years ago, and they found that children who eat just 3 hot dogs a week have 9 times the risk of leukemia versus children who do not. So friends, listen to me. You know, you've got to help yourself and help your family by making healthier choices on what you're putting into your body. And we're teaching you that in this series because I want you to know that there's a better way. It doesn't have to be difficult. It doesn't have to be hard. But you've got to start making the healthier choices. You've got to help you and your family. And ladies, listen to me for just a second. If you're cooking and you're the one responsible for cooking for you and your family, start making healthy transitions. Don't try to change your whole family overnight because you'll have a massive rebellion on your side. But you know, when your kids are little, start giving them a tablespoon of cod liver oil like your grandmother did. It's unbelievable what cod liver oil will do because it's an omega-3 fat, and it's one of the best foods that you can give a child as far as brain development and neurological development. Several years ago, in England, they did a study, and they found basically that children who were given essential fats, omega-3 fats like cod liver oil, actually had increased IQ scores, and actually children had problems with ADD and ADHD were able to be completely taken off their medication by using cod liver oil. So friends, listen to me. It's easy to have healthy kids. It's easy to have a healthy body, but you've got to start making the healthy choices. One can't be without the other. Number 6 that we need to stay away from is Msg Monosodium Glutamate. These are flavor enhancers that are used in foods. They're also called excitotoxins. They allow too much calcium to influx into the nerve cell and the brain cells, and when they do that, these cells die. They can actually cause holes in your brain. They actually kill so many brain cells over a period of time that you end up with lesions and holes in your brain tissue. We talked about that in an earlier show about a friend of mine who had that happen to him using aspartame products. That's what we believe happened to him. So, avoid these types of foods because aspartic acid has been shown to eat holes in the brain, which is an aspartame, and also monosodium glutamate, which contains glutamic acid, has done the exact same thing. Number 7 that we need to avoid are chlorine and fluoride in the water supply. Now, friends, remember, chlorine and fluoride are chemicals. They're not something that human beings were ever intended to ingest. Chlorine is used to purify the water system, but it also increases the risks of all different types of cancers. Plus, it's extremely poisonous. Fluorine is even more poisonous than fluoride is even more poisonous than chlorine is. Now, fluoride is a byproduct of aluminum production. It's right up there as far as poisoning ability with arsenic and strychnine. That's why if a child eats a small tube of toothpaste, that child can actually die from it. And so you don't want to put this into your body in high concentrations. I don't put it in my body at all. We have 4 children, a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 7-year-old, and an 18-year-old. My wife and I have been married for almost 25 years. And none of our children have ever had a cavity because we keep them off the processed sugars. You don't have to give your children fluoride or fluoride treatments or fluoride toothpaste to keep their teeth healthy. You just have to learn how to feed the kids properly. Very, very important that you understand this. Now, the next thing we need to cover is number 8, processed high-fat dairy products. Processed high-fat dairy products, I don't care for. If you're going to get dairy products, get them from a health food store or buy organic dairy products from your grocery store. I'm okay with organic dairy products, especially real butter to cook in and also whole-fat milk for young children over the age of 2. Under the age of 2, these children need to be using the raw certified goat's milk if you can find it, if it's legal for sale in your state. After that, they can use the raw certified cow's milk if it's legal in your state. But I always recommend that you use goat's milk for the first couple of years of a child's development because they can digest this type of milk and not have problems with their gastrointestinal tract. I never recommend using soy products for children, including soy formula. Listen to me, friends. Using soy formula for a child is like putting that child on birth control pills. There's so much estrogen in it. In addition to that, soy actually elevates the estrogen so high in a man, they can develop gynecomastia or enlarged breast tissue from it. And friends, that's not something that men want, I promise. Number 9 to stay away from are coffee products. Let me share something with you. If you occasionally have a cup of coffee to get up for a meeting or get up for a seminar or whatever you want to do or a presentation at work, I don't have a problem with that. But coffee elevates cortisol. When you elevate cortisol, you elevate stress hormones. It elevates storage of body fat, and it also makes you age very quickly. One of the biggest factors that we have causing so many people to age is coffee. With women, it also increases the risks of fibroid tumor formation in the breast tissue, and some researchers believe it could actually increase the risks of breast cancer. So friends, do what I do. I don't even have a coffee maker in my house. When I was in graduate school at Florida State University, I used to drink 18 cups of coffee a day. At the age of 27, I came down with heart disease, and I almost died from it. It wasn't until a friend of mine taught me scriptural nutrition and taught me the principles of health found in God's Word that God sent forth His healing, and He rescued me, and He healed me. And friends, that's what we're trying to do today. I want you to have life, and I want you to have it in abundance, and I want you to feel great every single day of your life, and I want you to do it without sickness and disease. Number 10 we need to stay away from are alcohol products. I include beer, I include wine, I include all of these products. Now remember, about 10% of the population, when they start drinking any amounts of alcohol, are predisposed genetically to become addicted to alcohol. Alcohol is extremely addictive. It increases the risks of pancreatic cancer, liver cancer, cirrhosis of the liver, alcoholism, osteoporosis, and breast cancer. And I've never heard anyone say this: my life was a wreck, and then I started drinking, and everything worked out great. You never hear that, but what you do hear is this: my life was going great. I started drinking socially. I became an alcoholic. I lost my wife. I lost my home. I got arrested for DUI. I went to jail. I lost my everything. And now I'm living on the street, or my whole life's a wreck. That's what alcohol does. Now, I know that a lot of people feel that an occasional glass of wine or an occasional glass of beer helps to reduce the risks of heart disease or stress in your body. It's just not worth the risk. There's all kinds of natural things that you can do from a natural standpoint as far as with supplementation and nutrition that does the exact same thing. Just as you're careful to keep your mind away from things that can corrupt your soul, you must keep your mouth away from things that can corrupt your body. I hope that you've determined by listening to this series to put some of the things into practice that you've learned so that you can have the health, energy, and vitality to live life to the fullest. One of the favorite presentations that I have that I've been doing for the past 15 years are the top 10 foods never to eat. I've been privileged to speak to over 1 million people at live seminars and over 5,000 radio and TV broadcasts around the country talking about the top 10 foods never to eat. This program, this book that we have that's called Maximum Energy, goes into these top 10 foods in just microcosm detail, telling you exactly why these foods are bad and what to do. There's an entire chapter in here just on artificial sweetener aspartame that I promise you, if anyone drinks diet sodas and they read this, if they're coachable or teachable at all, they'll never touch another diet soda. I think there's over 60 clinical references on that one chapter alone. Plus, we have a book that's called Healthy Country Cooking. It's my wife's book, brand new, old-time healthy favorites. This does not contain any of the top 10 foods never to eat. Plus, it contains no trans fats, canola oil, aspartame, artificial ingredients, nitrites, or pork products. Excellent recipes, delicious recipes. No matter what you do, this is a good place to start. A very, very important book. It's called Healthy Country Cooking. Plus, I also recommend that you look at HGH Stimulate, because HGH Stimulates helps to lower blood pressure, cholesterol. It helps to basically support the immune system. It helps to get rid of cellulite. It basically is a phenomenal product. Increases lean muscle weight, acts as a natural Viagra in men, actually stimulates the body to release human growth hormone, which helps to reverse the aging process. The Ultima Multiple, B complex, vitamin C, vitamin E, all of which support the immune system, plus our old-fashioned cod liver oil. Now, remember, when you're eating foods that are inflammatory, you're aging yourself very, very quickly. That's why I recommend, when you start our program, to get the GHI Cleanse, which is an anti-inflammatory product. It helps to stop the inflammatory cascade in the system and helps to get rid of aches and pains and arthritic conditions. Very, very important. Many of you have been sending me emails and you want additional information on our support that we're giving you through our office. I recommend that you sign up for our email update. It comes to you once a week at absolutely no cost to you, and because you're a breakthrough supporter, you'll be able to get that for no additional cost. So please call our office at 1-800-592-HEAL or 1-800-592-4325. Keep your letters, keep your cards coming. We try to answer those as quickly as we possibly can. And again, I want to thank you for supporting Breakthrough. I want to thank you for